So the top 5 for 2022, Toyota, Lexus, BMW, Mazda, Honda, in that order. And everyone's like, BMW must have paid to be on that list. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Ljs Garage. I'm sitting in the studio today, but I'm on my way out the door. Because what I'm going to do today is I'm going to walk around and I'm going to find people and ask them what their least reliable and most reliable cars have been. I'm just kidding. I'm not doing that. But if you're one of those people who likes to watch people get interviewed in public, I'm not a fan of you. It's weird. Don't come up to me with a microphone. I'll run, I'll panic, I'll freeze, I might pee. But anyways, today I want to talk to you guys about reliability. So it's one of the biggest questions that I get asked every time I do a review. It's an important question. If you don't ask that question, I want to be on that level of baller status that you are, to where I'm like, it's just another $50,000 for a new car. No biggie. I'll just buy another one next year. I want to get to that level. But till then, as someone that is an educated consumer, or I try to be at least, the best thing I can say is always ask those questions. If you don't, again, you're either a baller or, I'm not going to say the other thing that you are, but you know, it's important to ask. So with that all being said, I have the perfect explanation and answer to this question. And it is that it depends. So for me, in my driveway right now, I have the best and worst case for me. I have my most reliable car and my least reliable car. And they're both just happen to be sitting there. Both have different mileage, different histories. There's a lot of variables. But in my case, I will say this. My Jeep has been the least reliable car that I have owned. But let me just say this as well. When I say that it's not reliable, I mean that it always has something going on with it. Never once through the history of owning this have I been able to make it 5 months without some check engine light, without some sort of weird driving issue, and I get it. When I bought it, it had 70,000 miles. It's at 112,000 right now. So it's been driven. It's put some work in. My BMW, on the other hand, I bought it with 6,000 miles, and it's got about 36,000 right now. And other than needing an alignment, tires, brake fluid flush, oil changes, that's it. The car has needed absolutely nothing. There was one point when the emergency secondary battery kicked on and so BMW said it's low, and then I drove it for days after that and I never got a light for it again. So I think they were just trying to get me to buy a new battery. Besides the point, but with that being said, let's go back to the Jeep. I posted a video saying that this is not a car that I recommend people buying if they don't have a warranty or if they're not ready to do some work. And I'm not mad at the powertrain. I love the 3.6 and I love the 8-speed transmission that's in there. However, my problem with it is that all the accessories, everything else, all the supporting, doodads and doohickeys that make the Jeep run, they're questionable. And some of them aren't so bad because, O2 sensors, they go bad. That's a known thing, right? However, on a Jeep, you have to remove the drive shaft to change an O2 sensor. That's where I have a problem with things. But it's not as bad as, like, let's say Kia putting this starter behind the engine block in a weird place. But again, we've come so far in technology that, is it really that weird to put a starter that's not a really high fail point item anymore like they used to be back in the day? I don't think I've actually ever had a starter go out on a car. So the engineers on that may have done their research and said, hey, you know what? Let's move this to another spot because it's no longer a high risk fail point. But the biggest thing that I get is whenever I say, I love BMW and I think BMW is reliable, the first thing I get is hit with, you really a BMW fanboy? And my answer to that is yes. I've had 4 BMWs and every single one of them has been great. One of them gave me some problems because I tried to tune it, but it never broke down. It never left me stranded. And I can say the Jeep has also never done that to me either. I had to drive back from Florida with no air conditioning and no remote start and just weird clunky shifts, but it made it all 1,000 miles and it got me back home, right? So I knock on wood, all those good things. I can't say that the powertrain itself is any sort of issue. So it makes it really hard to ever answer the question, is something reliable? And how I look at everything now is there are a couple things to make note of. BMW got a bad rep back in the 2005, 2012 era, and I don't think a lot of people are car people, and so they don't realize that whenever you're the first with the technology, you're going to run into problems. The way I like to look at this too is, let's look at Apple and Samsung, rivals, right? So what Apple does is they allow Samsung to come up with new ideas, new products, and they test them. And Apple just sits back. They'll wait a couple models before they implement something that they see Samsung doing. There was one point on the Samsung you could eye scroll. I mean, you could look at your phone and scroll with your eyes. People realize that that's not anything people are actually going to use. Is it cool? Yes, but it's not needed. So Apple said, we're going to take that off the list. And so that's how a lot of companies operate. Someone has to be the guinea pig. Someone has to try these things out and be the first. When it comes to cars, I like to ask the question, how long has this engine been around? How long has this technology been around? How is this the first year for this company? Have other companies done it? And whenever you start to answer those questions, it helps to solidify whether or not I give a car a reliability rating. The next thing that I like to think about too is, how hard is this engine designed to work? You don't see it as much in the sports car world, because sports cars and muscle cars, those types, people tend to realize, hey, if I want power, I'm going to sacrifice reliability. But when you're talking everyday cars, a lot of people don't realize that a 4-cylinder non-turbo engine is not designed to work very hard. The minute that you add a turbo, that puts a little bit of... So the minute that you add a turbocharger, and the thing is too, I'm not saying all turbocharged engines come with a risk, but a turbocharger can be this big to this, well, probably like this big. And it all depends on what that car was designed to do. So let's take, for example, Mitsubishi. I love Mitsubishi. I think they're a great brand. Not so much in the US, because the price point that they have to compete at, they end up falling so short into the budget category. People are just scared and, not wanting to risk an unfamiliar car. But if you are someone that's been into cars for a while, then you know that back in the 90s, Mitsubishi was awesome. You had the 3000 GT, you had the Evo. There was all different cars that Mitsubishi had. Even when it comes to SUVs, they had I believe it's pronounced Pajero or Pajero. Those are pretty cool too. So now you look at those cars and you're like, wow, you got a 2-liter turbocharged engine that's making 300 horsepower, ballpark, right around 275 to 300, we'll just call it that, right? So same with Subaru. They've got a 2.5 liter that's making 305, 310 horsepower. So let's put this into perspective. That little turbocharged 4-cylinder is working its ass off. And if you don't know what I mean, here's an example. Dodge has the 5.7 liter V8 that is 5.7 liters versus a 2.5 or a 2 liter. Guess how much horsepower that 5.7 makes? No turbos, no nothing. It makes about 365 horsepower, right in that ballpark. So 60 more horsepower for, I don't know, you guys do the math here, for a couple more liters of displacement. It's not very efficient, but at the same time, a turbo is great, but it comes with the drawback of you're putting a little bit of strain on an engine that may not be ready to handle the power. So over the course of the car's lifespan, that car is going to be driven harder, it's going to be working harder, it requires better oil, it requires higher temperatures that it's going to be running at, and so those variables wear and tear on a car. That is why Toyota, which is 2022's most reliable brand, is at the top of the list. Toyota hasn't done turbocharged engines in quite some time. Let's go back to like the 90s with the Supra and everything like that. And so for now, they went ahead and they went to BMW. And that's always the shocker on this list. So the top 5 for 2022, Toyota, Lexus, BMW, Mazda, Honda, in that order. And everyone's like, BMW must have paid to be on that list. And I'm not surprised, not at all. The inline 6 that BMW had back in the day, and well, technically still to this day, they've got variants to it. It's been amazing. Absolutely amazing. And that's why Toyota said, hey, we want your inline 6 in our Toyota Supra. Made people mad. I'm not going to go into that because I've already made a video on that. I truly believe that if Toyota is giving a company the badge of honor to trust their reliability, people need to, understand why. The other thing with this study of the top most reliable brands of 2022 is that they only took 300,000 cars. And it might seem like a pretty good sample size, but when you realize that the Toyota Camry sells well over that, that number at any given moment, you realize that, if you only pick a couple hundred Wranglers to review, the numbers, the data, all those things, they potentially become skewed. And I know, if you are curious, you're probably wondering, well, if those are the top 5, what are the bottom 5? In very dead last place, Mercedes-Benz. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. After that, Jeep. I got a lot of comments saying that I should probably stop bad-mouthing my Jeep because it's not that bad. They've made it to 300,000 miles on theirs. But you know what? If you go to my Honda Pilot video, which is one of my favorites, but go check out that video, and you'll see the numerous amounts of comments saying that they've made it to 300,000 miles, 200,000 miles on a Honda Pilot. But then you go to my Jeep video, and you may have 1 or 2 guys for every 10 saying that their Jeep has been, for lack of a better terms, a nightmare. So then you've got GMC, you've got Chevy, Tesla, Ford, Cadillac, Ram, Dodge, all that. And then Nissan. A lot of those people are going to say, no surprise there. I can't defend all these brands, and I think that what people tend to forget is that there are hidden gems in every brand, and then there are cars that get no love. I have a buddy, he's shopping for cars right now, and we're talking about the BMW X1. Cheap, hardly anything luxury, but BMW has to have that compact SUV just to compete in that market. So what did they do? They took their Mini Cooper and they found a model that has a platform with front wheel drive, those things that work for them, and they converted it into a BMW. Good, bad, ugly, depends on how you look at it, right? As I said earlier, someone has to be the guinea pig. Toyota stays away from turbocharged engines, superchargers, those types. Many of the other manufacturers, they know that they need that. They need that to meet EPA regulations. They need that to, boost performance and meet those numbers at the same time. What you could do with a V8 back in the day, you can do that now with pretty much almost any 4-cylinder. I hate to say it, even Mercedes has a 4-cylinder that's making, I want to say 360 horsepower. Something crazy like that. I have no idea how they pull this power out of a car. Okay, so they have a 2-liter engine that makes 421 horsepower, the world's most powerful 4-cylinder engine. Whether or not that's reliable, I highly doubt it. Has it been tested? Probably, and it's probably pretty solid, but is it something that I would see at 200,000 miles and be like, wow, I knew you were going to get here? No. No. So, with Mercedes, everyone knows with Mercedes, Maybach, all of that, they are pretty much the leaders of luxury. Yes, there are other brands above that, Rolls-Royce, Bentley, those type of things that compete. We could sit here all day and argue. But when it comes to luxury, everyone thinks the S-Class. And Mercedes is always the top when it comes to tech. They load every car with tech. And so their reliability ratings dwindle because of that. You can't load a car with all the latest, greatest tech and hope that everything always works. There are going to be glitches, there are going to be bugs. And let's be real, cars these days are essentially computers. So a lot of these electrical problems, manufacturers like Dodge run into big time. Ford runs into it all the time. But anyways, we need these companies to be the first. We need them to try this tech. We need them to, experiment with self-driving. We need them to figure out how to do cylinder deactivation. We need them how to figure out how to do stop-start. Volvo is right here in the middle of this list. They're at spot 14. So Volvo is one of my favorite companies because they're leaders in safety and leaders in luxury. They don't get as much love as BMW, Audi, and Mercedes, but they deserve it. They figured out how to put a car seat into a regular seat, so you don't have to buy a car seat. It's got this little mechanism that folds out, and so you can just have a car seat at any moment. Pretty cool. But you know how much safety and testing they had to go through to get that approved before a child could sit in there? A lot. If they don't do it, Who's going to decide when it's a time to start inventing these new things or coming up with these new ideas? So I say all this because I don't hate any brand. And when it comes to Ford, they stopped making sedans because their sedans were just okay. They were average. But their trucks, one of the best. The F-150 has been going through trial and error these last few years, pickup trucks as a whole. And it's because the industry's changing. So now Ford is killing it though. You've got the Maverick, that's an awesome small truck, but the F-150 hybrid and plug-ins and those types, they're not very sound. There's a lot of recalls, a lot of issues, but Ford puts a lot of money into those trucks. The cars, not so much. So now that they slash cars, they can focus on SUVs and trucks. The Exploder, I hate the Exploder, but, and I'm talking about the Explorer for those of you that don't get it, but a lot of people still buy the Explorer. In fact, police cars are Explorers. And is it still one of the best-selling SUVs? Is it great for a lot of price points? Yes. But do I think the Telluride is better? Absolutely, wholeheartedly. Yeah, I think I covered all the stuff that I wanted to cover. And just explain why it's hard to say something is reliable or not reliable. You know, there was a time where a lot of these companies, they were owned by different manufacturers or different brands. So Dodge, for example, has switched ownership so many times that not a lot of people were happy with Fiat Dodge. It is what it is. But I do love a lot of their products. I think the interiors in their trucks are top-notch, better than the GMCs. Fight me if you want. But I love Dodge. I love that they try new things. I love that they're using their, the fancy e-torque system. And again, probably comes at a risk of someone has to be the guinea pig to put these trucks to the, to their paces, or even the 4xe. I just love the stuff that they're coming up with. It's super nice to see the Wrangler become electrified. I know a lot of people are like, you only get about 20 miles, 30 miles of range on the electric battery. Well, if you park your Jeep and you only drive to work and back, most people, for me, I drive about 7 miles each way. I could probably do that on all electric if I wanted. Just come home, charge it up, no big deal. So it saves on gas, and it does make sense. It might not make sense for your lifestyle if you drive 30 plus miles a day. Then guess what? You don't have to buy one. But my point being is that all this tech, all this luxury, all these features, everything that's being offered, you need a guinea pig. So the best bet if you want something reliable is stick with non-forced induction motors. That's why Toyota still has the 3.5 in the Camry. Those are solid, they make great power, but those 3.5s only make about 300 horsepower, which is great. It seems like it's not that much compared to, like, let's say BMW, their 3 Series makes 330 horsepower, and then they have a model that makes 382 horsepower. And even my M3 is a 3-liter, not a 3.5, but it's a 3-liter with 2 turbos, and it makes 420 something horsepower, 25, 28, something like that. And so with that being said, you have to determine how much performance you need, because once you start going for performance, reliability starts to teeter a little bit. You can't always have both. If someone says to me, I bought a Nissan, it's got a CVT, is it going to blow up on me? I could say it could. I have no idea. But I can say, hey, look, historically, CVTs started off rough. However, Mazda, Toyota, so many other manufacturers have their CVTs that are working just fine. So I could say Mitsubishi CVT is good, but I can't say that Nissan's CVT is terrible, but I can't say it's amazing. I say it's somewhere in the middle, but most of those cars don't make high horsepower. So under 200 horsepower cars with a CVT, you should be fine. Should be fine. But yeah, fun questions. Anyways, thank you guys so much for checking out yet another video in Ljs Garage. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or if you just want to say what your favorite brand is on this list, or tell me to stop, loving BMW as much as I do, feel free to leave a comment down in the section below. And I will see you guys on the next one. Peace, love, gap.